Good afternoon, everyone. It's the one, the only, the gorilla in the economist coming to you live on another hump day with the one and only, the master of disaster, the pathfinder on the road to Ruda, the baron of Bitcoin, the sultan of silver, the Gandalf of gold. The men hate him, the women want to be with him, the one and only Bix Weir. Bix, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Oh, I've been working too much lately.
Isn't that the story, man? I mean, we go into the new year thinking that, hey, just maybe things might slow down a little bit, and then bam, it's not. You're working more than ever. I actually went into this year thinking I'm gonna have a light schedule. Boy, was I wrong.
Well, there's the problem is we deal with too many subjects. I
That
mean,
is a problem.
when you talk about this stuff, there's nothing that it doesn't cover. There's no narrow focus of how the world is changing. So it's like, all right, you gotta get to the bottom of everything, which is, it's fun, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I just want to get to the point where things are settled in the world, Bix, where I don't have to do this anymore. I can just put on my afro, my Bob Ross afro, and do oil paintings on YouTube.
You
That's
can do
that's all I
that.
want to do.
You can do that right now. Go
I
ahead.
could, I could. I was thinking about this. Just like draw different types of oil paintings of various different types of monkeys and primates, and what they're, just a whole thing around that. Like the Van Gogh screaming person, but it's like a screaming monkey, and everything's blurred in the background. Or Michelangelo's Sistine Chapels, but it's like a monkey's hand touching a human hand. Like
Go for it. Hey, the world, it's a brand new world. We have to invent new ways to live every day.
yeah,
So you might as well do something that you love and do something that is good for society, hopefully, and don't be a bad guy, and don't don't come in as Treasury Secretary and say you're not going to audit the Fed like Mnuchin just did.
yeah. Well, it could be just rhetoric, man. It could be just rhetoric.
Oh, it's
Speaking of
not. That's not rhetoric. That's Mnuchin. He's just as evil as they get as
yeah,
far as knee deep in the bad guys.
right,
His father was a board member of Goldman Sachs.
yeah,
So, and he's been all over, and he was one of the guys behind the scenes, and it's really not good.
uh-huh.
So it throws into question what the hell is Trump doing? Is Trump really a good guy or is he a bad guy? I'm still of the opinion he's a good guy.
Well, let's
But
not ruin it, man. Let's start this program off correctly, dude. Let's get to Mnuchin in a little bit, but let's talk
oh,
about
he's on fire. He's doing well.
yeah. Let's talk about, will Trump allow the markets to freely trade? That is the question, my friend. What say you?
Well, he hasn't so far. Yes, it's
Or-
only 2 days, 3 days in,
Yeah,
but the rigging is alive and well, as can be seen. Obviously,
yeah,
Dow hits 20,000. That's interesting because that is a point that I've been looking at it for like a year. In 2009, in March of 2009, I wrote 2 articles about how Tim Geithner and all the spokesmodels on CNBC and the news stations were saying, "No, we've hit the bottom of the stock market. We've hit the bottom of the stock market." Even the president came out then said, "We hit the bottom." So I knew that they were going to rig it. So I wrote
yeah.
an article called "U.S. Confidence Con," and it gave like 10 ways that the U.S. government and the people controlling the computer programs are going to rig the market higher and try to continue the game. And that's exactly what happened. And they did it for 8 years of Obama, and now we're at Trump land, and there is no end of the manipulation. That's clear and obvious after today's gold and silver slam. I mean, it wasn't big slam because they weren't set up for a big one on the futures and options and all that. It's going to be a little one, but it's still a slam. It's still throwing thousands of contracts on the COMEX at gold and silver at the exact same time and forcing the price lower on purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is the MO of the market rigging that controls the US dollar, controls the price of oil, controls the price of everything. So as of today, there is no change in the Trump financial market rigging versus the Obama rigging versus the Bush rigging versus any rigging going back to the early 70s.
You know,
But here's the but.
yes.
My take has always been, well, he had to appoint some of these guys just to, make it into office. So now he's in office and he's got to get some key people in place. And, notice the first guys in place were the generals.
Uh-huh.
So in case there is some kind of attempted coup by the retarded left, the generals will be in place and have power to overthrow anybody who's trying to overthrow Trump.
Yeah. To prevent the snowflake revolution.
Yes, exactly. But remember, Mnuchin's not in yet, and I would be happy if he didn't get in.
Well, didn't you say he's going to get roasted during the hearings?
Well, he has been. I mean, the guy is horrible.
Yeah.
The guy is the devil reincarnated.
Yeah, he's a total scumbag. He's a douchebag. He's a douchebag extraordinaire.
Yeah, but if he got in there and stayed in there, he would play with the markets just like Trump will do great, and the stock market will do great, and the misallocation of wealth will continue to flow into the hands of the few, and the many will suffer without any change in the current allocation of assets to humanity.
Yeah,
nothing can happen. That Trump can't do a thing to change things unless he destroys the old system and implements a new system. And because all the bad guys have all the money now. That's been the way it's been put together. So,
right. We need to change
the concept that Trump can turn things around and get us going on a solid footing is a fallacy. It's a fake concept because the scales are already weighted in one direction.
Well, the only way to fix it, man, I mean, it's so heavily weighted, but it's weighted by a massive imaginary bubble. And the only way to
bubbles.
massive, lots of bubbles, all sorts of bubbles.
But I mean that's the market bubbles. I'm talking about the current holdings of all the wealth of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It's concentrated into just a few hands, and unless you destroy that wealth, they will have the power behind the scenes. Yeah, they can wait out a Trump presidency and see if they can get someone in 4 years that is kind of on their side. But remember, it's about wealth allocation, and the allocation has turned to a 0.1% of the population owns 99% of the wealth.
Yeah.
And the rest is just us, fighting for scraps. So unless something happens to redistribute that wealth by either taking it away from the rich and giving it to the poor, which I don't think is the right thing to do, or destroying the electronic fictitious wealth in the first place, so that the fake wealth, the promises, the credits, the blips is washed away. And that's what they believe, they meaning that 0.001% believe is wealth now. And they think that if they have the legal claim of debt that is owed to them, they are the richest people in the world. And all these electronic blips that we call money or stocks and bonds and all that stuff that's all it is it's a credit instrument. And as long as people believe that, under US law, they can, call in these debts at any moment, which the banks can under US law, they can call in all loans at any moment if they want.
Yeah.
It would obviously wreak havoc, and then it comes down to the court. Will the court uphold the law that was written by the bad guys and is exercised by the bad guys when it all falls apart? Because it's these ultra wealthy people that will claim to have the legal power and legal ownership over all monetary assets.
So let me ask you this, man. So do you think now how would you propose, just to get your idea, and how you would go about doing this? How would you dismantle the wealth of the bad guys? I mean, you're right.
There's only one way. Because we can't get in there and get it. It's all
Right.
in offshore entities. It's all in other jurisdictions.
As in the hard assets, a lot of it.
Well, not a lot.
Not a
Truthfully,
lot.
99.9% of the wealth of the world is electronic assets now.
Okay. So we can get it at some point.
Well, we can. I don't know if we can get it. I think if we can delegitimize electronic assets, electronic debt assets, by allowing the system to trade freely, which would destroy the derivative market, which would destroy every bank, and all these assets, even government assets, are held in banks.
Now, very excellent point you bring up. Now, let me broach this question to you. Do you think something like the blockchain technology will be instrumental in probably getting rid of that?
It will be instrumental. Well, see, there's a all right.
Or can it be used to,
Yeah, it's a great technology. Don't get me wrong.
right.
It doesn't lie. It's a truth machine. But here's the issues and problems. The banks might try to implement a blockchain technology to maintain and hold their current assets.
Yeah.
They can say, "Oh yeah, we've been cheating for these past 100 years, but now we're going to introduce truth and honesty into the system. Now that we have all the assets, we're going to introduce truth and honesty into the system and adapt the blockchain technology to manage the current system." See what's going to happen there is they're going to say, either they're going to crash and say, "Oh, it's the blockchain's fault because the system crashed," whether or not it's because of truth and honesty. But more often than not, they're going to say, this is a truth machine. You can't this is what it is. And yes, when it was implemented, we had all the assets, but since then we still have all the assets because look at the blockchain. So there's problems there. There's problems with Bitcoin exchanges because they only exchange derivatives and they don't exchange real Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There's problem with online wallets because they're doing the same thing that Mt. Gox did, in that they are not going out and buying Bitcoin when people, they only go get the Bitcoin when people start redeeming their accounts on the online wallets.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's a pool of Bitcoin and a pool of cash in each one of these exchanges and each one of these wallets. But the amount of trades that go on,
it's unallocated.
It's not. These aren't. Yeah, it's not allocated. Well, it's fractional reserve.
Yeah.
Type, just like stock market, just like how banking works.
Right.
In the Chinese exchanges, they'll put in, say 100,000 Bitcoin into an exchange and then trade 1 million Bitcoin a day. Well, what's wrong with that picture? They don't have the Bitcoin if everybody were to redeem at the same time.
Yeah.
And they don't have the cash if everybody, but they make money on basically the way the Chinese exchanges were making money was because they don't charge fees for trading. That's why the volumes are so high. They made money on lending out margin for this stuff, and they would get paid for the margin they lent out. So yeah, it's a mess. But there is the only solution goes back to kind of what I call the original good guys are saying. They don't believe in what Trump's doing for the good guys, and it's only a faction of the good guys who are looking at Trump saying, "Oh yeah, okay, this will work. We can smooth out the transition to a real system." But at the end of the day, you're going to have to pull that Band-Aid, and that Band-Aid destroys the wealth of the 0.0001% that hold the majority of their wealth in electronic IOUs known as money, known as derivatives, known as mortgage-backed securities, all that stuff. And yeah, you're gonna wipe away the rest of us with it. But the problem in the world today is not the amount of wealth people have. The problem is the amount of debt people have, credit,
right.
And it's in the hands. And you got your debtors, and then you got your collectors are the 0.0001%. So if you wipe out the electronic assets, you're also wiping out all the debt in the world.
Yeah.
And that's kind of if Trump's a good guy, he won't cause it to happen. All you have to do to make this happen is stop rigging the markets and let markets trade freely. And then instantly gold and silver and Bitcoin will skyrocket. I don't know what the Dow is going to do. It could go down 75%. It could go up 100%, 200%, 10,000% in the
Yeah.
next year if
Right.
the Fed opens the spigots. But who's going to believe it? What will the banks be doing if that kind of distortion happens in the market when their derivatives, they've hedged everything in their known demand, and you need every counterparty to stay in business for the bank hedges to work. That's why China bailed out Deutsche Bank of their derivative implosion, is because they didn't want the system to crash. And that's probably why Trump is all pissed off at China. He does want the system to crash. We do need the system to crash. And yeah, put Mnuchin into the Treasury Secretary spot if you are going to crash the system, because he'd be easy to fire. He's an asshole.
Very well said. Which is also probably the reason why. Why don't you give the audience, those that haven't heard who Mnuchin really is, the level of douchebaggery that Mnuchin was involved with, man.
Well, it goes back to his dad was one of the board of directors of Goldman Sachs. He's a Goldman Sachs guy in and out. I kind of don't have my notes on him, but from the top of my head, was One West Bank, one of the biggest mortgage fraud players. Yeah. He bought it with a hedge fund, pennies on the dollar type of thing, and then the idea was to kick people out of their houses if there's equity in the house, get a lot of government kickbacks. That was the plan, and he was one of the worst at it. They kicked people out for almost no reason most of the time, and did not, work with the people to refinance if there was equity in the house. Huge demonstrations in front of his $1 million mansion.
What state is this guy in? He's California,
right? He moved to California. I think he's from
probably Connecticut or something.
Yeah, I think he's from a big Jewish money family. Hang on. Let me refresh myself here. Goldman Sachs, fund manager, went to Yale, so he's skull and bones, which is not good. Mm-hmm. Bought IndyMac, changed the name to One West Bank, and then he supposedly rebuilt the bank by foreclosing on all the houses that had equity and then getting a bailout from the government for the ones that didn't. And then he sold it to CIT, made all the cash, and ran off and did something else. He is, okay, here it is. Born December 21st, 1962, New York City. Second youngest son of a wealthy Jewish family.
Graduated Yale in '85.
Robert Mnuchin was his father. He was a board member of Goldman Sachs. He's just one of the criminals that was, is behind the scenes. Why Trump put him there is the only reason. Either Trump is a bad guy and he's been fooling us all, or he put him there so he would get fired.
Yeah,
the guy take the fall, and then Trump has someone in his back pocket who would say, "Okay, we're going to audit the Fed. We're going to do all these things. We're not going to rig markets anymore." Blah blah blah. So we'll see what happens. But I knew this time would be the hard time in the transition, because Trump's getting all these other things in place that are great, and then you've still got the market rigging. You've still got these bad guys that he put in charge of some of the stuff like that, like Vincent Viola. He was the head of Virtu Financial, and I've been screaming about that guy for 10 years. I couldn't believe it when Trump put him as the head of the Army. He got kicked out of West Point. He didn't get kicked out. He was implicated in the 1977 scandal, the cheating scandal. And then, he did his, I think it's 4 or 5 years you have to do after you get out of West Point. He did his stint in the Army and immediately went to Wall Street to work, his computer market rigging operations. So yeah.
Did you know that he was classmates with the Salem Chalabi? Did you know that?
Who's that?
He is the you remember Ahmed Chalabi, the guy who was supposed to be the interim president of Iraq after Saddam Hussein left?
I'm sure. I mean, it's such a small
It's
group of bad guys that run the world right
yeah,
now.
and he was connected with Paul Brenner, the whole 9 yards.
Huh. Well,
Interesting.
yeah, I mean, the whole thing, this was going to be the hard part for me. I knew it would be the first couple of months of Trump, because he needs to get certain things in place. And at the same time, he's going to rig the markets. But I have a theory that if he really wants to turn America around, you can't turn America around based on a false foundation. And that's where we are right now. We became great, make America great again. We became great because we rig markets and we overthrow governments we don't like, and we lie, cheat, and steal. That is not the attributes of a great society, and not
Right.
attributes of a society that will last as long as it has. Normally, it wouldn't last. Historically, when you go off the gold standard, I think it's 7 to 8 years later you go back on it, because as what always happens when you go off the discipline of a gold standard, they print too much money and it destroys the system and everybody goes back to gold. Well, this time we had computers to rig the markets. That's why it's lasted 45 years or so. It's because we had the ability to rig the price of oil, rig the price of silver, rig the price of gold, rig commodities, rig the dollar, rig the bonds and stocks, and we can rig anything we want with a computer.
Yeah.
That's the power of the computer. That's what Root A is all about. Root is Root A, the very first computer programming language, financial computer programming term. I believe it was Root A. And then from that, you get stocks and bonds and checking accounts and all that in a computer program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Alan Greenspan invented in the 1960s, these computer programs that both created the financial markets and rigged the financial markets. So, yeah, this is the hard time, though, because you got a guy.
This is a hard time. You brought up a very valid point. I mean, how do we turn the country is built on a bubble foundation. How to
and a criminal, not just bubbles.
No, you're right.
It's a criminal bubble.
Yeah, it's criminal. It is criminal. It is.
It's done by lying, cheating, and stealing and rigging.
Yeah,
and if that's Trump's image of what a great America is, I have a problem with him. But I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think he's said it many times in the past that he wants to audit the Fed and he wants the bubbles to pop.
Yep.
And I love did you notice the change in the decoration in the Oval Office?
No. What's
so Obama had these kind of dark red curtains in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
Trump put in gold day one. Gold curtain.
What?
Yep. Go look it up. Look at Trump signing all his presidential declarations in the Oval Office, and look for pictures of it. And then
it's right on the housebeautiful.com. You're right.
And look at you can see Obama's gold. Red. Obama's was red. That's classic.
Wow.
So I think Obama's doing a lot right now, and it's only a couple days into it. I'm starting to sound like CNN, who's like, "Oh, you haven't done this, this, and this." He's like, in the press secretary things. He's only been there a couple days, so we got to give him the benefit of the doubt, because he couldn't have done any of the stuff he's already done had he let the market trade freely.
Sure.
Because it would have destroyed the market, and that would have been the number one problem: is nobody has any cash in their hand. All their credit cards and their checking account, savings account, 401ks have been destroyed. How's Trump going to get all this stuff in place when he's got that going on?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
But the other problem is the longer he waits, the deeper he gets into his change. He's going to destroy whatever he sets up as far as economic change that he's making, because how far along, unless he wants to continue market rigging through his whole term. And if he does that, I got a problem with that. That doesn't make America great. That destroys America. No matter what the rich get and the people and where the stock market goes and all that.
Right.
So I do believe within the next couple of months, we are going to have the mother of all crashes. And I do believe there's a plan how to restart things.
Hmm.
A lot of that, a lot of Trump's kind of even forcing it with all his talk of tariffs and all that. If you go back to like the 1930s, when they were trying to, what are we going to do to save America after the stock market crash? They passed the Smoot-Hawley Act, which was put tariffs on like 20,000 items that were coming into the country. And all it did was prolong the despair. Unemployment went from 8% to 25% in 1933, and the system fell apart because when you throw tariffs on countries, they throw tariffs on you.
Right.
And then what happens is that imports and exports get cut in the 30s because of the Smoot-Hawley Act. The imports and exports both were cut by 50%. So
Right.
that doesn't sound like real strong economic growth that Trump wants. Now, I have a theory that when we crash the system, no one's going to trust the U.S. dollar, obviously, and no one's going to trust the U.S. much at all as far as trading. So it is a good idea to get these companies to come back into America, because we're going to have to rebuild our manufacturing base for the sole purpose that nobody will trade with us.
Right. Right. Exactly. You're absolutely right, because with the crime that's been committed with
Which
all
one?
of yeah, I mean the crime, especially with in regards to the fraudulent economic markets, because of the rigging, the disingenuous, the lies,
Well,
the
the
graft.
government statistics are classic. How can Trump ever go back to the real numbers as far as inflation or
Yeah.
as far as unemployment and all that when they've been rigged for so long and are so distorted? I mean, how do you go back? There's only one way to do this, and it's to crash the system.
Yeah, it's got to be purged along with so many other things. You're right about that, man. So it's going to be very interesting how to see these things play out, and then exactly what variables will come into play, and what things that are under the surface would rear their ugly heads during this process is going to be very interesting. And I mean, look at the markets, man. It's up, and who knows? I mean,
It's
like what
rigged.
you said,
It's
totally
rigged.
rigged. Will
It's
it, will it go up to 10,000 times? Who knows?
Well, it
Will
can.
it pull
It's
back
just an
up?
electronic. It's one click of a mouse to do that.
Right.
All you got to do in the basement of the Treasury is click, I want $100,000 Dow. Keep buying it until it hits $100,000. Click the mouse, bang, the computer runs off and buys everything until it hits $100,000, and then it stops. And then at $100,000, level it out so that every time it goes under, you buy, and every time it goes over, you sell.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do when you have a computer and you don't have a regulatory agency that is going to stop you
Sure.
from doing anything like that.
Right. And then
So
the
yeah,
ESF is
all you
still
have to do is click the mouse.
and the ESF is still running rampant. So
Well, it's been in control. Well, the
yeah.
ESF is actually a fund. It's not people, and it's not a place. It's
Right.
a fund that was established in 1934 from the Gold Reserve Act.
Right.
That fund supposedly has trillions and trillions of these electronic assets. A huge derivative player because they don't have to report derivatives, and it is controlled by the Working Group on Financial Markets. The
Yeah.
working group was put together by Bush Sr., and it includes the head of the SEC, the head of the U.S. Treasury, which is nobody right now, the head of the Federal Reserve, which is Janet Yellen, who takes her orders from Stanley Fischer, unfortunately. And then it's that Yellen, it's going to be the head of the Treasury, and it's the head of the CFTC and the head of the SEC. Those are the four people who go to Donald Trump and say, here's what we recommend you rig or not rig. And because those are the people who control the Exchange Stabilization Fund. So ultimately, Trump does control it all. So I think that's a good thing, is that he has the ability to shut off the Exchange Stabilization Fund, shut off the market rigging. And usually the Fed and the people within the Fed, like Stanley Fischer, will tip off the Mossad and the Israeli financial riggers, and about what's coming. I think he needs to be routed out. The Stanley Fischer, the number 2 guy at the Fed.
Yeah.
He was the head of the Israeli central bank. What's he doing as number 2 person at the U.S. central bank? Yeah, he has dual citizenship, like Rahm Emanuel and all those guys. What are these people doing there?
Exactly. So if you have dual citizenship, you should not be serving in any capacity in any strategically vital aspect of government or functioning of the country. Just shouldn't. You can't have Stanley Fischer. We're gonna do things that's gonna benefit the investor. So that's why we're visiting negative interest rates. I mean, he just said that right before the election.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all pitching that negative interest rate nonsense. I mean, where else can you go with the market? I mean, how else are you gonna pop it? Negative interest rates has to come into play.
They have the exchange stabilization fund, which they don't have to really show to anybody. So you can go anywhere you want.
Right. And what about that tribe? Oh yeah, we stopped doing QE. No, you didn't.
They're buying all the U.S. debt now. The Fed, and I mean the insanity of what goes on behind the scenes. And then there's something that I've talked about for a long time. It's like, if they're lying about unemployment, and they're lying about the rate of inflation, and they're lying about GDP, and they're lying about all these economic metrics, why aren't they lying about the amount of money that is created? Mm-hmm. How easy is it for the U.S. government to secretly create trillions of dollars without telling anybody or any government? If they catch wind, the U.S. will take out that country and destroy their currency using the derivative markets, which they've done to Venezuela and Zimbabwe and stuff like that. It's not just the U.S. government, but of course, Venezuela was pissing off the U.S. Where's Venezuela now? Their economy is destroyed because we destroyed it. All we have to do is click the mouse a couple times and sell the bolivar, and all of a sudden the government's broke and they got to go or drive the price of oil down, and so that they go broke because they're solely dependent on the price of oil.
But you want to know something though? I mean, Venezuela had it coming to them.
From our stance, from the nobody has that kind of destruction coming to them.
Well, their whole system was on the verge of collapse, bro.
Because we collapsed it. Okay,
well, yes, we've been active with NGOs and all that, but
not just the NGOs. We control the currency markets. Correct. If you hyperinflate, if you destroy someone's currency, you destroy the country.
You're absolutely right. So what happened was this. See, Chavez, knowing that, he immediately started buying gold and having his gold shipped back from the BOE back to Venezuela, which then Maduro supposedly leased back to Goldman Sachs and the Bank of England.
I don't know if he did that, actually. I think he did lease it back.
He did lease it back.
Wait. He made it. There was no physical movement. That's the key.
Right.
But Goldman and the Bank of England can use it in their derivative game to say, we have this contract that says we have this many tons of gold in Venezuela, but whether or not the physical movement of the metal ever happened, I doubt it did.
Yeah, exactly. So we take that into account. But also, I mean, okay, so the price of oil crashes. What were they doing with PVSA prior to any oil markets going down? I mean, when oil was, $80, $90 a barrel, what was the Maduro administration doing with PVSA, the state-run oil company?
I don't know. I mean, they were spending money because they had money to spend. It's like anybody. If you're flush with cash, you're going to spend on all the social programs, and then when you take that away, which kind of like Trump is taking away the social programs now. I saw a CNN, of course. I just watched CNN for the fun of it.
And all comedy value.
All these women, because they've been interviewing women and how Trump hates women and Trump's going to take away all the women's rights. And they were talking about birth control. Mm-hmm. And under the Obama plan, birth control is free for all women under Obamacare. And Trump's guy that he's bringing in to head that has said, we're going to have all birth control available to anybody for purchase. And these women were just bitching and moaning, he's taking away all our rights. I'm like, wait a minute. Whose right is it to get anything free in the world?
Correct.
Why is it your right that I have to pay for your birth control Even even if I had like moral or religious reasons not to want to do that, just taking my money to pay for your birth control.
1,000.
Where in the Constitution does it give you the right and me the obligation to pay for your stuff?
It's on this. It's on the 35th Amendment, Bix. You haven't seen that, obviously.
So anyway, I was looking.
That
at
was a
this.
very sexist thing of you to say, Bix. Very sexist.
It's not sexist at all. I'm not going to force women to pay for my condoms, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly.
And so so I'm not going to force the United States, which is the collective people within the United States, have to pay for this stuff altogether. And if one guy uses more condoms than the other, he's obviously getting a bigger benefit from free contraception. So everybody else has to pay for the people who use more condoms than other people. That's the kind of thinking that just flies right past these people in the interview, is that taking away social programs, taking away all these things that Obama gave them not out of his pocket. Obama gave him out of the pocket of everybody in the United States. He was giving away, contraceptions like it's candy.
You mean he doesn't have a stash? Usually when you debate somebody who's a brainless welfare recipient who's been on welfare generationally from one generation to the next, they're like, well, who's going to pay for it? And they always answer, irrespective of the person's race, color, or creed. The answer is, well, Obama has a stash. Like, what?
Obama just takes it in the form of taxes and money printing.
Right.
He takes it from, in money printing, takes it from your pocket, takes it from everybody's pocket because it dilutes the value of the dollar, and taxes obviously takes it right out of your pocket. So there is no such thing as rights that people are claiming that the government has been giving them. It is not their right to get free contraception. I think it's great if some rich person on the left, who was all into this, like Meryl Streep, paid for everybody's contraception. I would say she's the greatest person in the world because she is opening her own wallet to fix these problems. But instead, she and her leftist friends are saying, you're taking away a woman's right to free contraception. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. Free contraception means somebody has to pay for it for somebody to make it.
Yep.
And if you're telling me that I have to pay for a woman's right, where are my rights?
Yeah.
I mean, it's more complicated than this. And that was just one thing I saw on the news. These women screaming that Obama was taking women's rights because now, this woman who doesn't make much money is going to have to buy her contraception.
Oh, horror!
For free.
Oh, horror!
And nowhere in that CNN interview was the fact that, oh, by the way, you may be getting it for free, but all of us are paying for it.
Correct. Well, CNN doesn't want to do that. I mean, God forbid. I mean, they might actually educate their brainless users.
Yeah, CNN I watch for pure entertainment and to know what the bad guys are trying to do. Yeah. I'm surprised that Trump still allows them to go to the press conferences, because now they raise their hand. Well, Trump said the voting, there's a problem with the voting. The people who voted, a lot of illegals are voting. So does he think the election is illegitimate? I'm like, Jesus Christ, give it up already. Trump was right. Yes, a lot of people voted that weren't allowed to vote. That's how Clinton won by 10 million votes. And, Trump didn't campaign in California or New York because he knew that those states were lost in the electoral college. So why would he? He wasn't trying to win the popular vote. He was trying to win the election.
Right, exactly.
If it was a popular vote, he would have been all over California every day. Like, he was all over the Midwest.
Exactly.
And he would have blown away Clinton. And if the voting thing was done correctly, which we all know it's not, it's rigged. And I think that's a big change that Trump is talking about now and talking about making is change the voting, how it's tabulated with computers, and all that. And I think they should introduce blockchain technology into the voting system to make sure that it is done on the up and up, and everybody can see what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. Also, another thing, if you subtract the votes that were in the state of New York and in the state of California, Trump would win the popular vote hands down.
Oh, massively, yeah.
Yeah, by 4 million, I think so. By 4.9 million, he would have won.
Yeah,
I'm telling you. So yeah, he's absolutely right. It is a rigged thing. I mean, we all
but
heard
that's one of the things we got to fix going forward, though. If we want to rebuild America and make America great again, we need to do it on a sound basis in voting and the sanctity of voting. I mean, ever since the computer and the Diebold computer rigging machines, the voting machines from Diebold, now it's some company owned by George Soros. That's got to go.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly correct. We all heard the story about, people like men like Guillermo del Fuego, who was voted 13 times in 13 different districts, without proper identification or whatnot. So these things do happen, and then you got.
But you don't even need that. I mean, you
don't even need that.
Yeah, there are stories of they're shipping them over state lines to vote somewhere else, but they don't even need that. All you need is a computer,
right?
And change the program and the tabulation. That's how Trump won in the first place. It was already baked in. He just had the power. The good guys had overthrown the bad guys, and they had power over the computer rigging.
Right.
Would Trump win in a fair fight? I believe so. But absolutely. Did he need to? No. They rigged the numbers right at the main tabulation spot computer, wherever that lies. I think it's at Langley. And yeah, because the good guys are in charge now. Same with the Brexit. Everybody thought the Brexit, the bad guys always rigged the vote, so it's going to win anyway. And then all of a sudden, no, it didn't. I knew once that happened that the same thing would happen in the U.S., and it did. Because the good guys have removed the bad guys behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So the good guys control the market rigging. The good guys control the vote rigging now. And Trump, I believe, is bringing this up now because he doesn't want he doesn't like that he won, that he had to rig the votes because the other side was so criminal. We need a free voting. We need the vote of the people to count once again. So there has to be a revamp of the voting system, and that's what Trump is saying right now. And that's kind of where CNN got their question. Their person asking Trump's spokesman. They're like, oh, does this mean that Trump agrees that the vote was illegitimate? I'm like, oh my God.
Absolutely right, man. And the whole thing also it's pretty funny that people don't realize it's like the best analogy that I've ever received was it's like a football game. You could be a team, you could have all the yards, but it all matters at who scores the most touchdowns, not who has the most yardage. And that's the electoral college versus the popular vote. It's about winning the college, man, and Trump's did a great job. He strategized well and he pulled it off.
Yeah.
Moving on, sir. Please tell me this rumor I'm hearing about secret gold and how it affects the price. What's
I'm writing another book. Because I have.
When is this book coming out?
Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully next week, but probably the next couple of weeks.
How do you write so fast? I don't get it, man.
I've been working on this one for 6 months. So.
God, I gotta get back into writing.
But this isn't about the writing. It's really investigative.
I envy you. You put out newsletters every freaking day. You have a million one things to do on your schedule. Yet you put out newsletters every freaking day. You're writing on. It's like, how many books have you written already? I mean, geez, Louise.
4, 5, including the Economist magazine analysis, which is the most popular one now. The World in 2017.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh my God, look at these tarot cards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the new one is about the hidden gold because it's going to come into play. And I've talked about it for a long time, especially in the Grand Canyon. This gold that they found in the early 1900s, right before they began the Federal Reserve System. I believe G. Edward Griffith's book about Creature from Jekyll Island. I believe in that thing. I think the only thing he missed was the secret gold that they found in the Grand Canyon and what that would have done to the monetary system of the time. Because in the early 1900s, there was only was there's conflicting reports. I think it's 500,000 ounces of gold in the monetary system around the world, and there's also reports of not 500,000, 500 million ounces, and then there's reports that there was 100 million ounces in the world used as money back then. So they find this gold field literally in the Grand Canyon, and they do analysis of it, and it has million or billions with a B, billions of ounces in it. And they start mining it, and they start mining it, and there's a big article, front page of the New York Times, about billions and billions of ounces of gold found in the Grand Canyon, and then it's shut down. The mine is shut down. You never hear another thing about it, and then the Marines are in there guarding it. You're still not allowed to go into that area of the Grand Canyon. I believe that they went to Woodrow Wilson after, they found this, and these Chicago banksters started mining it, and then the rich said, "Oh my God, this will destroy our wealth too," because they only had a certain amount of gold. So this operation was shut down, and I'm doing all kinds of research into who owned it, who was doing the mining, and this is in the middle of the Grand Canyon in like 1908, 1909. And I mean, that's back when the technology just to get there took weeks, and it was a very rugged part. So you can't have mining. How many gold panners will it take to go in there and get all this gold out? Because that's how they panned. That's how they found gold, was panning in the placer sands and things like that. So they sent all this huge equipment, and they even built a steamboat. They carried it in like on a horse, and piece by piece on horseback and on and wagons to get to this one spot. They built this steamboat, and it's really interesting how this all got shut down, because it took them 3 years just to set up the operation, and then instantly after or right during the New York Times announcement, they shut down the entire operation and basically kicked everybody out of there. And then the U.S. government took over, because they built facilities for people to sleep, because this was going to be a huge operation. So yeah, I've been digging in. It's so hard to find all these documents going back to like 1908 and stuff. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. The book should come out next week, and it has a huge bearing on the transition. Will we move to gold if we find out there's not 180,000 tons that's ever been mined in the world? There's millions of tons,
right,
and millions of tons available to be mined. That would change everything on the monetary system going forward if we do decide to go back to gold. And what would it do to the price of gold? Right. All my Gatter friends are saying, no, it can't be true. It can't be true. It can't be true. Just like they said about Yamashita's gold and the Nazi gold and all that. Oh, it can't be true. It can't be true. It can't be true. I mean, the gold bugs are cracking me up, because they're so set in their ways that there's only 180,000 tons of gold that's ever been mined.
Right.
And they'll pull out documents, but these documents are all written by people like Harry Oppenheimer. Yeah. The banksters kept track.
Yeah. The bank. Yeah. You're going to fight the banksters, but you're going to rely on data written by banksters. It doesn't make any sense. Look, the best book, and dude, you turned me on to this, but the best book I've ever read in my entire life to really understand the gold market is Gold Warriors.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That is the greatest.
That doesn't help you understand the gold market. That helps
not the gold market, but the secret history.
The secret gold market.
Yeah, the secret gold market of what the hell's really going on. Once you read that, there's no friggin' way. It's so well documented.
So many people died in the creation of that book. Peggy and Sterling Seagrave should be given the Medal of Valor, because they documented and wrote this amazing book documenting everything that happened, and people around them were dropping like flies. And when they originally published the book, they didn't even put their names on it.
Yeah,
because you're talking the secrets of the world, and all they were doing is put together, kind of the same thing that GATA does. Put together 2 + 2. Here's some official government documentation, official testimony from the Ollie North case. The gun running, and that talked a lot about the funding through Marcos in the Philippines using Yamashita's gold, and if you take your blinders off, that gold is completely the rarest thing in the world, then you can see what's going on really. And do I think gold will go up in price? In value, it will definitely go up because the U.S. dollar they've printed a hell of a lot more dollars than they're telling people also. So yes, gold will be a good asset to hold. Silver will be probably 1,000 times better. I do see a point that gold and silver are traded at parity. Parity meaning 1-to-1. Right now it's 70-to-1. And the reason is because the amount we have above ground. Gold, all the gold that's been mined is kept in a vault, and stored away. All the silver that's been mined used to be kept in a vault, but now is used in electronics and solar panels and flat screen TVs. So there's about 6 billion of each above ground. Now those are like figures that come from places like the USGS. So those figures are probably off. But if you have the same amount of each metal, and one metal is way more valuable as an industrial metal than the other, I would assume that silver would be a lot more valuable than gold without market manipulation, without the price rigging.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And hopefully Trump, I think Trump knows exactly what I'm saying. At one time, Trump was on the road to Ruta, or at least someone named Donald Trump. I don't know if it was actually him, but I had a subscriber named Donald Trump a long time ago, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is before he announced he was going to be president. But I had the Bank of China on the road to Ruta too. They know exactly what's going on. All these people, it's not like it's hidden anymore. The secrets behind the market rigging, the secrets behind the gold manipulation, silver manipulation. I mean, silver is a classic example. Deutsche Bank comes out and admits they were rigging the silver market, and turns in evidence of 4 or 5 other banks who were rigging the silver market. So those like Jeffrey Christian, who are still allowed to sound off and say that gold and silver aren't manipulated, they need to be sued. Their clients should sue him because he was flat out wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The whole thing is quite remarkable, man. It's when these people go to realize, when all this things come to surface, it will really, really rock the market, bro.
There will be no market.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is the unbacked fiat monetary system. The only reason it has lasted so long, especially the electronic version of it, is because the markets are rigged. And the moment the rigging stops, gold and silver and Bitcoin and oil are kind of the 4 big ones. The moment the rigging stops and things are allowed to trade freely, the exchanges will freeze up because everybody will get out of the paper electronic stuff and try to get their hands on the real stuff, the gold, the silver, the Bitcoin, and real hard assets in the ground. But at that very same moment, those who have already got those assets understand this is the moment they were waiting for, and that's the reason they bought gold, is for this coming crash. There's no way they're going to sell it. The first thing they'll do is try to buy more of it. So who are the sellers? There won't be any.
Right, exactly.
So what happens to our free markets if the free exchange of physical silver for cash is introduced to one of these markets? None of the markets right now trade physical silver for cash and call it the market price. They all trade derivatives with a delivery component.
Yeah. Right, with a delivery component. God knows what that means.
Well, on the COMEX, you can see how many ounces are registered for delivery and how many ounces are traded every year on the COMEX. I think last year was about 80 billion ounces of silver were traded, and I think it's around 25 million ounces in the registered category.
Yeah,
something very low. Or what was it, 125? I don't remember the exact number, but in registered, I don't know what it is actually right now. I haven't looked at it for so long because ever since JP Morgan got their vault certified as a COMEX vault, I don't trust any
You know,
of the
you know,
numbers.
no, you should. And again, I've told the story before. One of my partners in Hong Kong, there was a Swiss bank that was buying, one of his clients was a Swiss bank who was buying gold, and they were getting gold out of a JP Morgan vault. And this is supposedly a COMEX certified vault. This shows you how certified COMEX is. JP Morgan on their paperwork says that they're not responsible for the gold that's coming out of their vault. In other words, like all they can certify is that this gold is coming from our vault, but we cannot, certify the purity or the authenticity of the gold bar, which put the Swiss bank they're like, what the hell? So they would have, my partner in Hong Kong melt down the bars to prove its efficacy and its purity and then recast it. So we'd have to reassay the bars and then put it into vaulting and storage. That's JPM. That's a COMEX certified vault. I mean, if that doesn't shows up somebody's spine, I don't know what does, bro.
Yeah. It's not just J.P. Morgan. It's all the they lie about everything.
Yeah, they do.
Harvey Organ up in Canada went into Scotia vault, the registered vault,
Scotiabank,
and said there's nothing in there.
Right.
Yeah, and they claim to have all these, stored ounces of gold and silver, and he's like, I didn't see it.
No, and Scotia is one of the manipulators.
Oh yeah. They were named by Deutsche Bank too, right?
Yep, they were named by Deutsche Bank as one of the culprits. Absolutely. Well, brother, we are at 3 minutes left in the broadcast. Why don't you plug?
That flew.
I know, time flies when you're having fun. It's hump day, baby. That's what happens.
Go to roadtoruta.com, put your email in there to get free emails. And there's a merchandise on the site. If you look at the top, it's Ruta's roadside store or something like that it's called. And go to my YouTube channel and click subscribe, because I'm doing a lot of YouTube lately. I think everybody gets too lazy to read, so I'm putting on YouTube.
Awesome. Fantastic. And with that being said, folks, we are done for another hump day. If you want to follow up me on Rogue Money, you can check me out at roguemoney.net. Also follow me on Twitter at the Rogue Money. Also the Rogue Money Facebook. And with that being said, we are over and we are out. And again, guys, if there's people out there that that need help with their credit score, need an improvement in your credit score, check us out on myfreedomnow.us. myfreedomnow.us. That being said, we are over and we are out.